Hey there, it's Brainy. April is Autism Awareness Month, and I'd like to raise some cash for the month to donate to the Autism Self-Advocacy Network. So, how am I going to do that? Well, hey there, it's Brainy. April is Autism Awareness Month, and I'd like to raise some cash for the month to donate to the Autism Self-Advocacy Network. So, how am I going to do that? Well, allow me to demonstrate. This is a fish stick. Not very interesting, is it? But what if I dressed it in a flight jacket and sunglasses? That do anything for you? No? Well, how about if I turned it into a festive party clown? This isn't like an NFT. I like to call them ARTs, or actually realized tokens. I wish there was a single word name that I could call them, but anyway. If you donate a minimum of $20 to my campaign via the links in my stream, and then email me at brainytherpgcat@gmail.com or join my Discord, I will be more than happy to send you a transparent PNG of one of these lovely fish sticks. Keep your requests safe for work, by the way. Oh, and 100% of the donations will go straight to ASAN. So, what have you got to lose? Donate to a good cause, and I'll draw on a fish stick for you. That doesn't sound as good when I say it out loud. Anyway, thank you very much for your support. Happy April, everybody.
Meow.
This fearless caddis is the raddest, has skills of the baddest, magic, slinging buzzing for status, practically unmatched, runs all of the gamut, in fact, he's a reference games and chatting, bent wizardly hatting, questing, stacking, napping, this cat diversified, witty banter, seeking kitty answers, roll 20 to scamper, tune in, and enjoy the ride, Brady, the RPG cat. Brady, the RPG cat.
Is this thing on? Oh, okay. Hello, cats and kittens, felines and felidae, humans and variant humans, and every race, class, and subclass. Welcome to this very special episode of Brainy the RPG Cat. As you know, well, you know, I just kind of have I have a tendency. I've been having a tendency to say that I've been doing a lot of very special episodes lately, but there's also a reason for that. Is that I try to be as active as I possibly can during the month of April and do probably as many unique, different kinds of streams every single April because I have a cause, and that cause is the Autistic Self-Advocacy Network. So, because of this cause, I have dedicated myself to an 8-hour stream on April the 20th, which is Easter Sunday, and also my real-life birthday, so that I can try to do as much as I possibly can in order to raise money for Autistic Self-Advocacy Network. People have been really good so far. Right now we're standing on $125 total towards our goal of 1,000. And so I have a tendency to believe that any money that I'm capable of raising is important, but it's also just the fact that everything that we are capable of raising is kind of helpful to the cause, but it's also just does me really, really good to see people that are actually giving donations to this cause. And so it's become really, really important right now because of things that are currently in the news cycle that are just too grave to mention at this point. But also, it's also, without having to give too much away when it comes to that, I do also want to say, just thank you everybody who has donated so far. Oof, I didn't know my resolution was so bad when I opened this. But at any rate, thank you. Let me take a moment and let me give a special dedication to absolutely everybody who has donated so far. Thank you to Stacy and Albert Babani. Currently, right now they have donated $25 on April the 16th. Shelly Strauss, who donated the current leaderboard amount of $50 on April the 14th. Cindy and Mark Blank, who donated on the 12th with $25. And then another anonymous donation for $25. So thank you, absolutely everyone, for making donations so far. Is that ASAN, of course, as you know, is the charity that is doing the single most in order to advocate for autism rights. And that's, more than, creating a dialogue wherein, people feel that autism needs to be quote unquote cured. The Autism Self-Advocacy Network is here in order to help people be able to navigate legal, emotional, psychological trials and social trials that they have as a result of being on the autism spectrum. So thank you very much for anybody who has given a donation. This cause is really, really close to my heart, as you can clearly see. And since I'm here on both Easter and my birthday, is if you feel like just giving even the tiniest amount, it would be really, really helpful to me. But also, how should I put this? if you donate $20 or more, then I'm going to give you what I consider to be one of my patented fish stick ARTs. Well, maybe that didn't work out because it was capital. Okay, wait, hang on a second. Nope. Still not quite it. Well, I guess I'm going to be working in the chatbot in a minute, but okay. So if you do leave a donation to twitch.tv/Brady the RPG Cat and you spend $20 or more, I will give you a follower, a fish stick ART. This is a piece of art that I customize for you, and then I give it to you in the form of a transparent GIF that you can put anywhere on your social media, on your website. You just have my permission to do that. And thank you very much for helping us out with our Streamathon. So I know that we've been waiting a long time for the first game to get started, but before I do that, I think it's just really, really important for me to check my Streamlabs and make sure that these commands are going through, because this is really just the most important part of what we're doing right now. All right, so let's see that I'm logged in. Okay. Okay, make sure that CloudBot is on, and then in another second, I'm going to need to make sure. Yeah, CloudBot is working against me at this point. Okay, make sure that's staying. Make sure that's staying. You know, Streamlabs just kind of has this very frustrating thing, whereas that, you know, you can turn on the CloudBot and then it will turn itself off if you need to do something like update or sign another agreement. Try this numeral address. Okay, now it's working. We got an American one. Okay, donate $20 to Autistic Self-Advocacy Network and receive a custom Brady Fish Stick ART. Like I said, these are my very custom artworks that I send out to people as a result of donating $20 or more. It's custom. You can put anything you want on it as long as it's safe for work, and then immediately afterwards you can put it on your website or social media to show off that you are an advocate of this really good cause. And so, gosh, where are we now? We're like 15 minutes into the stream and I haven't played anything yet. So let's just go ahead and let's do that. The first game I'm going to play is that, well, it's been on the screen this whole time. This is a game from Itch.io. It is published by an independent publisher named Cruz Elroy. This is Annalyn MD. So the first time that we actually saw Annalyn is that, ooh, you know what? I actually just probably going to need to reopen this because since this is an Itch.io game, I turned it on before I turned on my controller, and so I'm probably just not going to have my controller controls unless I turn it back on again. All right, so okay, we're back. So still having some kind of problems here. Is that more than likely it's the fact that my controller isn't Bluetoothed on correctly. So let's just try to resync really quickly. Okay. I need to do something where, you know, I just kind of differentiate my Steam Deck controller and my PC controller because they look exactly the same, and I'm always just kind of trying to pair one or the other. Okay, so as I was saying, Annalyn was previously a character in a Steam-released game that was a combination of Mario Brothers and Pac-Man. And so just a classic arcade game that was basically mashing up two different kinds of Nintendo-style early arcade platform games. She's back in this game, which is currently just out as a demo on itch.io. And this is a game that puts a lot of creative slants on the game of Dr. Mario. So let's go ahead and let's take a look at this. At least first thing we gotta take a gander at here is to figure out what the basic controls are. So here your goal is to eliminate germs while creating rows of cells. Germs and cells are bundled together into pieces. Every few pieces, a cure will drop that can clear germs. Matching germs touching each other will be cleared simultaneously. When a row is completely occupied by cells, then those cells will disappear. When the bar on the left is full, a mega cure will appear in place for the cure and then clear many germs and cells. If you don't need the mega cure, then you can hold it up and rotate or drop it on the bottom row to fill the bar halfway. If a germ or cell rests outside the confines, then it's game over. And then clearing gems and cells increases your level. So there's a lot of things that are just kind of added to the basic Dr. Mario formula. There's level ups, there's a full rotating screen, there is there's basically like chain drops that like the same kind that you have in Super Puzzle Fighter, where you drop one pill in the center and then it knocks out any of the pills that are paired up by color. But also when rows are completely occupied by cells, then those cells will disappear. So in situations where, you know, you just have the germ cells on top of the other ones, well, actually, when you just kind of line up cells in a row, that's very Tetris, is that if they're all identical, then you can make them disappear. So there's multiple layers of what you're doing here. You're trying to line up the cells so that they go all the way around the tube. You're trying to remove the germs with 3 to a color using a basic cure, and then every once in a while you just get the very special drop that will help you to clear most of the screen. So of course, we're starting on beginner here. Okay. So what's significant here is that I do have the ability to rotate left and right, but it's not possible in order to see it, simply because I'm dropping my first piece here. But quite literally, okay, so unfortunately, I don't think I quite have a place to drop a cell. So there's similarities between this and then another really popular tile drop game, which is called Pack Attack, which was released by Namco in the 90s. You know, just another thing chasing that Tetris rainbow, but also just kind of had the unique concept of, you know, putting several cells together and then, you know, just having a significant amount of the germs get eaten up by Pac-Man whenever Pac-Man appeared on screen. That's basically how that works. So what's really, really interesting about this game, you know, more than anything else, is that it's, you know, taking just a lot of material from a lot of different games, but then it's putting it together in a way where it forms just one big cohesive whole that, you know, they're just kind of making, probably the way you would put it is like you're making the super group of block puzzlers. Okay. Yeah, definitely want to eliminate those. And so Adeline is over here in the corner, and she's telling me, you know, how many germs and rows that I still have to complete before I'm able to go on to the next level. You know, and it's a big number too. It's like 84 total. Let's see. Here we are. I got an enormous amount of the reds going, and that's, well, I got an enormous amount of the purples going. Well, you know, I'm playing this on easy right now. So they are quite literally going easy on me when it comes to Yeah, just the way that I'm on me simply because I'm learning to play. I'm trying to do my level best in order to figure out what the mechanics are here. It's making me more than a little nervous that I just had this one really tall pillar of cells going on right now. You know, and there's something, you know, pretty sincerely biological about all this. So what's really interesting is that when it comes to color matching is not the main thing that you do in this game. It's probably secondary or third to stacking the cells in the correct place. But, you know, it's still important because, you know, if you can manage to get, like, multiple rows of different gems in the exact same place and then get them to touch, then that will actually make up what your combo is going to be. So, you know, still getting involved in like combo, potentially competitive play, like in lots of other drop puzzlers, like well, versions of Dr. Mario, first of all, but also the very famous Puyo Pop, which is basically the great granddaddy of all drop puzzlers that use one-on-one opponents and a combo system. So, you know, I love it. I think that, you know, before, you know, I became self-aware enough to realize that you could play full-blown board game style strategy games on as video games, just as console or, you know, video games in general. Before I became that self-aware, before I started to get into Civ and things like that, this was really how I actually... This was the... drop puzzle games were quite literally the only way that I knew how to have a intellectual and stimulating experience playing video games, you know? This is who I was when I was a very, very young kiddie. I used to play a ton of platformers. I used to play more than my fair share of fighting games like Street Fighter and Mortal Kombat, and then so when it came to games that were pure strategy, I would always go for drop puzzlers simply because there were a lot of them in the 90s, and there was always, you know, just kind of interesting new wrinkles in the game mechanics that, you know, I always appreciated. All right, so let's see, what are we doing here? All right. Okay, I'm having a lot of problems, you know, I don't think I have my bottom row clear right now, so it's getting really hard to, you know, to see if I'm capable of completing a row. Because I'm trying to think out of two sides of my head right now, because I am trying to combine my Tetris skills with my pack attack skills, you know. And so this obviously, you know, is just entirely made in order to help you to, you know, to be as versatile and as multi-purpose a block puzzler game could ever be. But it's also really, really brain-bending. It's also something that you have to be very careful with and pay attention to. You know, there's a few drop puzzlers that I like that are complete and total sleeper hits, things that people aren't aware of. One of them is a game that was released only in Japan, and it had the Ranma 1/2 anime license on it, believe it or not. And I couldn't even tell you the name of it because it's Japanese, but I think it was called... The English translation was Great Secret Art Battle. And so do you know what the Great Secret Martial Arts game that they were using game mechanic that they were using? They were using paper, rock, scissors. You quite literally had to Rochambeau your way into, you know, in order to delete blocks. And it was a big competitive puzzler too. Like 100% of the gameplay was one-on-one Puyo Pop style. So it just kind of had that slightly more agile wrinkle of using paper, rock, scissors instead of using the usual color system. Okay, well, so since I managed to clear as many the required amount of cells that I mean the required amount of all right, well, so what I'm learning is that, okay, you have to you can actually have the ability to clear the entire screen of everything. It takes a lot. You have to clear an enormous amount of viruses in order for that to happen. So I can totally understand, this game when it comes to, how it marries all the mechanics together. I mean, what you're basically doing is you're hoping to eventually concoct that mega cure that's going to clear the entire screen, but you have to do a lot for it. They're telling me I have to clear 125 individual viruses in order to get it. That is a big number. And I'm pretty sure it just keeps increasing in size the more often that I do it. I don't have anything else to say other than this is fun. I'm really enjoying myself. I'm playing on beginner mode. I'm probably going to need to try this on a normal or hard mode just to make sure I get in precisely the competitive spirit that I need to. And so I was also playing Dr. Mario like ever since I was really young. I couldn't have been more than 8 or 9 years old when I first played Dr. Mario. And so the very earliest versions of Dr. Mario I used to play on very easy mode. I used to go from level 0 to level 4. That's how low I was playing. And then I used to start to run into troubles when I started to get into like level 15, when the blocks just kind of started getting the tiniest bit faster. But that's also another great thing about drop puzzlers is that the significant thing about drop puzzlers is it's actually one of the very few games that actually significantly ramps up in difficulty as you're playing it. So before long is that I'm playing easy right now, but pretty soon they're going to start dropping me into the hard and challenging mode. So now that I've gotten my feet wet, I can clearly see that the blocks are starting to drop faster. There's just kind of more individual blocks, not as many viruses popping up. And that's all just by design. That's just supposed to be here in order to help you to... Okay. I am getting a combo here. Let me see. I've got just this great big mass of purple ones right now. Okay. See, right now they were about to throw the ominous music on me. They were saying, well, I'm getting a little bit close to the top here. I should watch that. All right. All right. All right. So, that's really interesting because you get into the threatening area quite frequently. Okay, so yeah, so I think right now I'm counting the meter, and I think that I'm currently at level 9. So once you get to this point, it's really, really hard to start differentiating the viruses and the blocks. Yeah, you're not going to be able to get, a pure hit when it comes to any of the potential organization here. You're just going to have to, pick your battles. Figure out, where you can best put things together. Okay. Okay, Annalyn is over there in the corner, and she's getting really pissed off at me because I am not doing this as neatly as she wants me to. You know, I'm starting to do the panic button shuffle. That's the one where you just kind of scroll the, you just rapidly scroll as quickly as you can, so and then just kind of hope things will fall into a decent place. All right. So like I said, is that, okay, the highest level I've been able to reach so far is level 9. And this is easy mode. You know, I got a lot to warm up, and now it's time to go into trial by fire. You know. Okay. The screen is getting way too full. All right. Okay, so... You know, and while, you know, drop puzzlers are always great, there's very few people on Twitch that actually like to play them as a feature, you know. This is where, you know, I feel like I can be a little bit distinguished because I be brainy, and so nothing looks like too much of a challenge when it comes to yours personally. All right. Ooh, that one was close. I almost got to the top with that one. All right. Oh, drat. Totally not where I wanted to drop that. Okay, I'm in trouble now. Yeah, well... Yeah, there's very few places where I might actually be able to put a good one. So I need that super cure at that point. Is that, you know, maybe that's what I'm trying to do at this point. I'm trying to keep myself alive long enough in order to be able to make the combo. Oh, well, now it's already too late because now I've already lost. I like that. In the game over, you can actually see your beaker scrolled, so you can get a good idea of, you know, where it is you might have made a mistake. Okay, time for... to enter the old initials. Okay. All right. Oh, I could actually put in my whole name on this one, I think. Let me give that a try. It's probably going to end up Brain or even Bry. I'm going to put in Bry. Let me see if it actually saves my name too. That would be nice. There we go. No, yeah, I get a total of 5 characters, so I can put my whole name in. All right. So, I am actually getting, like, text messages from friends and relatives on my birthday. And so I'm going to try to do something. I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to give them the address to this stream, so maybe some people will be kind enough in order to tune in and actually give a donation. I am pulling out all of the stops this year, okay? Absolutely no absolutely no excuses this time. I'm going to do absolutely everything I can in order to make sure that I get some donations today. It's just the most important thing to me right now. All right, so you know, one of my aunts is still drawing pictures of the Scarlet Derby and Midnight Jay, which was my independently published book series. That was the thing I was doing before I became a Twitch streamer. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead. I'm going to type this in as a text. Okay, thank you, everyone, for the birthday wishes. I'm doing something charitable. I'm actually doing something charitable. Okay. Okay. I'm streaming, okay, you know, for 8 hours to support Um, the Autistic Self-Advocacy Network. A nonprofit dedicated to the rights and autonomy of people on the spectrum. I'd like it if everyone in the family will tune in and possibly give a donation. The address is twitch.tv/Brainy the RPG Cat. Yeah. You know, this all like kind of sounds like something very serious and something very burdensome for yours personally, but it's not. I get to sit here and play video games for 8 hours. It's truly a charmed life. All right. Okay, let me see if that actually gets us some traction. There's a good chance it might not because, you know, there's just a lot of people in my family who just kind of don't have tech savviness. There's lots of people in my family who unfortunately don't really use the web. But also the fact that I continue to ask just this one relative in order to help support my campaign has been superlative when it comes to adding to the donations that I have, because I just have this one aunt who is has a autistic grandson, and they're the ones who are, you know, have always been following very closely what I've been doing with ASAN, because it's certainly something that is important to their family. So I'm starting once again at level 0, but that's perfectly fine because I'm still getting used to what my general strategy is going to be here. So no matter what I do, the first few levels are going to be relatively easy. So I'm not too concerned about that. You know, see, I like that this takes the Dr. Mario formula and then it just kind of adds it in every single, you know, it adds every single potential scenario into it. Not only are you trying to defeat gems with cures, but then you're also trying to line up cells in order to make them disappear. And then you're also just kind of building and leveling up until you get to drop that great big pill that's going to, you know, bring everything back down to 0. All right. You know, there's a certain irony because, you know, I am actually here in order to advocate for a medical and psychological cause. And I'm just playing this indie game that is extremely similar to Dr. Mario. All right. You know, and, you know, in a funny way, these are the kinds of indies that I really enjoy because they are, you know, taking formulas that I remember for game mechanics from a very, very early age, literally the days of the Nintendo Entertainment System. And then they're improving on them in a way where it's fun and it's indie and it's got enough new things in it in order to keep an adult like me occupied with it. You know, the first games were pretty ingenious when it just kind of came to gameplay itself, but these games just kind of take that and they just really give it a shot in the arm and they make it a lot stronger and, you know, just more complex. You know, I can literally say that right now I'm not doing more than just playing a game of Dr. Mario, but I'm really enjoying myself because the rules in Dr. Mario have just changed so much that now they feel like something completely new to me. All right. Okay, I'm getting some good responses. One of the main ones just come from one of my cousin who obviously is my aunt's daughter, who has her autistic son. All just one part of this family who are really, really happy with how I'm trying to continuously put money together for autism awareness. I just got one from my older brother. That's superlative. All right. It's funny that, okay, I'm just kind of keeping my eye on a, I'm keeping my eye on just my basic text messages right now. There's a lot of people that are doing telethons. A lot of people who are doing telethons, they're usually reading their chat. There's usually looking at their social media. Me, I'm just looking at my regular text messages because I'm doing all I can just to get my fam on the same page as me when it comes to my, I don't want to say philanthropy, definitely, well, the important and worthy cause that I choose to advocate for. Let me put it that way. All right. So, a lot of, I tend to get stuck in these great big loops of self-ponderance, and that's one of the reasons that I call myself brainy, because the gears are always turning. They're always, always turning. But, I'm going to try to shut the thinker down now, just enough in order to see if I can enjoy the rest of this playthrough. Let's see if we can actually do that, And I say shut my brain down, even though that's not a thing I can actually do when I'm playing a drop puzzler, because I'm trying to actually get my brain to move as quickly as possible. There used to be this series of, logic puzzle games on the Nintendo DS called Brain Age. And the very early iterations of these games were just trying to find, the simplest puzzle types, the simplest types of games that you could play that would actually stimulate you intellectually. They'd have you do things like play games of Sudoku. They would have you play games of Nine Men Morris. They'd have you play games of, I forget specifically what the name is, but that paper game that you used to play in school where you just connected dots and lines together. I think most people just call that game Dots and Lines, so. But after, making about 2 or 3 sequels to that game, the third sequel actually had a version of Dr. Mario in it. So, there's a part of me that thinks, maybe I was low-key trying to be brainy all along, because I had such a profound enjoyment of Dr. Mario that, I was already doing the work of using games for my own intellectual stimulation. Maybe I'm patting myself on the back too much, but, it's also my birthday, so I'm allowed to do that a little bit. Anyways, this is actually going quite well. There's this part of me that feels like I actually went a little bit into my subconscious, is that as I'm sitting here and I'm talking to you, I'm just playing at the same time. So, I'm just kind of operating on 2 different levels. It's a good feeling to have, oftentimes is that, I've said things about my, 1 or 2 things about my family that are, a little bit less than kind while I've been making these descriptors. But I also do have to say is that, my family has been astute about me in a way that, has always been very conductive to all of these little hobbies that I have. The most significant one to me is that there was one time when my mother walked in, and I was in the middle of playing a solo game of Go. Go, the ancient Chinese game where you actually match white and black stones right next to each other. You know, my mother took one look at it and they say, you know, you would never become senile if you played games like that. Senile is probably not the right term for it. You know, I go slightly more when it comes to say, you know, Alzheimer's, which is, you know, the very specific diagnosed condition. These when it comes to when it comes to that particular ailment, you know. But, you know, it's absolutely true is that there's a ton of studies out there that say, you know, if you spend enough time playing games that have particularly complex rule sets in them, then there's a very high likelihood that you're going to keep yourself from getting conditions like Alzheimer's. You know, the brain is a muscle. That's pretty much the that's the more colloquial way of putting it. The game is a muscle and it needs exercise just like any other muscle, which is ironically a line that I also got from Brain Age. Everything is coming full circle. Oh yeah, I love it when a plan comes together. All right. See, I've already passed my previous level. I'm at level 10 instead of level 9. And I'm doing incredibly good because I've managed to summon 2 Mega Cures. Okay, Annalyn never likes it when you waste a pill. I mean, that's just being an efficient medical professional. All right. Let's see. Very good, very good, very good, very good, very good. You know. You know, I can also just be thankful for the fact that I went through that first playthrough and now I just have a stronger idea about how to play the game at large. So now I can actually begin to put myself in a place where I can strategize. All right, there we are. You know, just like in Tetris, you know, you start to kick yourself when you find yourself in a situation where, well, you put a virus in between several cell blocks and that's not going away until you actually manage to get through the cell walls again. All right. And a dee 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 dee. Hidey didey didey die. You know, this is kind of the way that, you know, I liked to, you know, make decisions about things is that, you know, I like to do things in layers, quite honestly. You know, there's just ways that you can always kill 2 birds with 1 stone, make your own fun, you know, do all of those important things that, you know, actually make you feel like a versatile multitasking person. You know, and so I like to spend large blocks of time doing 8-hour streams because it means I can do a lot of different things all at once. I can actually turn on a dime slightly and I can make alterations to what I might be doing. And I can also, you know, multitask in the way that, you know, I'm here making internet content for you people, first of all. Second of all is that I can do things like support this very important charity. So, you know, this isn't something that is unfamiliar to anybody who actually is a streamer. You know, I think that literally everybody who is a streamer or a VTuber, they do this ad nauseum, and they're very proud about the kind of versatility that they have. All right. There we are. You know. You see, there's lots of really good cell walls here, but unfortunately, I don't think anything that I can penetrate. I'm starting to reach that critical mass time again. So I've managed to get into what I believe is level 14. Yeah. Adeline is particularly flummoxed that I wasted that one pill there. Alright. Alright. All right. All right. Well, okay. I'm pretty dead right about here. Up. I should have dropped that on top of the reds because the reds were going to be a significant drill. Okay, well, now I'm done. Oh, gee willikers. Oh, shucky darns. I am currently in my first hour of this. I don't know specifically how I'm going to pace myself, but once again, you know, it's just Easter and my birthday, so, you know, I don't care too much about the format today. I'm just going to play things as I enjoy them. You know, probably going to do maybe about 1 or 2 more full rounds of this. I think maybe that's a good way in order to stick a pin in it. All right. Da 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 da. You know, this is a very simple game, and well, just like Dr. Mario only had like 3 soundtrack tunes in it, you know. And then we got into like the 64-bit and onward area, and Dr. Mario managed to accrue a total of 4 total songs in the soundtrack. You know, you know, this Cruz Elroy, this person who's making the Adeline games, are playing to that. Is that they just have 2 or 3 tunes in it, but they're also incredibly good sounding and memorable songs. You know, they only had to worry about the title screen, the menu, and then the main gameplay tune. So that's just 3 songs that had to be composed for the total package. Also, you know, I did take the time in order to leave a small donation and download this on itch.io. But also, this game is also free to play. But you have to do something that, you know, I think a lot of people have become unfamiliar with, and that is to play games online in a web browser at newgrounds.com. Once upon a time, you know, before, you know, we had a truly viable, independent, downloadable game culture, is that if people wanted to play with original ideas, they would make them in Adobe Flash, and then they would upload them to this website called Newgrounds. You know, and even before Newgrounds was around, there was just tons of other sites that, you know, facilitated the uploading of web games. You know, lots of them that are just kind of independent and website based. You know, like freegames1234.com. You know, they used to have URLs that sounded like that. But then also, no, don't actually go there, by the way. I don't know if that's a real website. But, you know, that's basically the way that they used to name these things. And then also, there was the site that was actually made by the creators of by the creators of the Flash platform, and they used to call it Shockwave, because Shockwave used to be part of the total name of the software. It used to be called Shockwave Flash, and it also used to be released by an independent company called Macromedia until Adobe bought it and then just turned it into Adobe Flash. you know. Corporate synergy, it's out of control. That's all I can really say about that. But you know, I think I've spent the past year and a half on a complete moratorium from Adobe. I'm the tiniest bit curious about their 3D rendering program, but even then, you know, I have the mindset of, you know, actually downloading Adobe's 3D rendering program, or I can actually just put in the hours and learn Blender, which is free and open source. This is another great thing about our current technological age, is that, you know, there's this free and open source program that people are actually using to make 3D graphics that are as good as CG animated films would have been like 3 or 4 years ago. And since it's open source, they can even push it further than that. They can make a movie that stands arm in arm with anything that is currently being made by Pixar or Sony or any of the major film studios these days. And then they can just release it afterwards. You know, once again, there's ups and downs to that. It actually does make... it actually does force people, you know, to make some of their creative projects independently for a threat that they actually might not ever do them at all. But, you know, everything is just kind of this weird trade-off, is that, you know, I've always been a big fan of that old literary chestnut called the monkey's paw. You know, anytime that, you know, a creative tool is made, is that you're effectively making a wish on the monkey paw. You're creating something that has good things about it, that has good outcomes, and it has bad outcomes. The first time I think I ever truly came to the realization of this is that when I was reading that very, very old science fiction author, Isaac Asimov, the inventor of what people kind of refer to as the fictional robot, is that the robot that is actually capable of theoretically fitting in with concepts surrounding invention. You know, robots that were servile and also followed what Asimov called the three laws of robotics. A simple philosophy that states that a robot cannot harm itself, a robot cannot harm others, and a robot must protect others, even if it means harming themselves. I'm being a little bit too dime store with the nomenclature here, but that's basically the long and the short of it. So anyways, I'm going on an enormous tangent here. Asimov, you know, actually wrote essays about some of the creative writing that he did. And so something that was really significant to him is that the acknowledgement, well, is that he personally acknowledged the fact that anytime something was invented, there were good sides or bad sides to it. You know, he used the example of the automobile. You know, automobiles are a fantastic invention that has allowed us to travel distances far greater than we ever have before. But it's also caused them a lot of very, you know, deadly accidents and results in probably thousands of deaths per year. You know, this is always, you know, the double-edged sword that you have to deal with when you're dealing with any kind of technology. Funny that all of this has come out of, you know, a very simple web-style game that I downloaded off of itch.io, isn't it? But, you know, I didn't choose the brainy life. The brainy life chose me. All right. All right, so here we are. Oh, wow. I didn't even see it. I've been playing for a long time. I've already gotten myself up to level 8. You know, I quite honestly think that is literally the first mega cure that I was able to summon. All right. You know, and then there's just now that I've been playing this, there's this funny part of me that thinks, okay, well, I want to do Mean Bean Machine. I want to do Pedal Crush, you know. Quite literally any of the drop puzzlers that I have on my Steam list right now, but there's also a part of me that doesn't really want to do that. You know, I'm locked in on just simply surfing my downloaded games list, but you know, it's not necessarily that I want to make that into, you know, what the entire stream is made out of. You know, there's a part of me that also might want to abstain from the games I play during regular streams, because those games are quite often strategy games, and those can eat up a lot of time, you know. Obviously, I'm a person who wants to dedicate an enormous amount of time to playing a game like Civ. Virtually the whole stream dedicated to a run on Civilization. But, you know, so I'm probably going to just play much smaller games, which is also something I tend to lock in on other days, you know. I'm speaking to the paradox of, I guess, self-gratification when you're on the spectrum. Is that, okay, there's sometimes I want to do a lot, and then there's times that I want to do a little. But then I also inevitably do a lot, even if I do a lot using a little. Like, almost virtually what I'm doing right now. You know. This is thinking. This is deep thinking. I cannot stop myself from deep thinking. But while I'm deep thinking, I might as well subconsciously play a drop puzzler. And now you know what Brainy has to deal with. Alright. Oh, it looks like somebody has actually made a donation. I'm going to have to check that in a moment. Let's just try to see if we can get to the end of this playthrough. So this is the best that I've done yet, because I can see in the corner that I've managed to get to level 30. You know. The games are longer and the questions are tougher. All right. Okay, well, once again, we're starting to get into that rock in a hard place area. Okay. Totally not how I should have scrolled that. I scroll it. Watch me scroll it. I be scroll it. And now I'm just hung up on one singular joke. How do you like that? Ha! Up. Okay, so I'm trying to do something very specific here. I'm trying to learn how I can play the 0-hour game. Is that I'm trying to figure out what is the best way for me to possibly clear the screen when the screen is this high. I'm probably not going to be successful in creating my thesis on this, but I'm sure as hell going to try. Ah, dang it. Okay, that was an awful time to waste a pill. Alright. Okay, let me look at some more of these personal text messages. Is that okay? What a great cause. I'll send a donation to that nonprofit with lots of love. Thank you for caring for children with autism. That's a very nice one. Thank you for sharing. I'll definitely make another donation for this great cause. Well, that is more likely that comes directly from my aunt, who has already donated $25. Thank you very much for that. Then challenges for my amazing family, who says count me in. And somebody actually posted the direct link for Tiltify, which is something that even I didn't do. So this is the link to donate whatever you can. Remember that any dollar amount counts. Oh, people are actually starting to show me an intelligence that I sometimes only ever see among people who regularly stream. And that's what everybody says when you stream, is that they say, please give to our donation campaign. Every little bit is helpful. Everybody is always just needs to be very, very grateful for the kind of donations that are given to any kind of personal donation campaign or any kind of charity campaign. Okay, well, people are starting to rev each other up in my DMs, but unfortunately, yeah, we're still at the same amount so far. So, well, there's really only one thing I can do about that at this point, and that is going to be to pick out another game. Yeah, never mind entering my own high score for a third time. Let's see. I mean, I'm pretty sure that there's just going to be people who... here's interesting. Let me think about how to put this. And while we're doing this, I'm going to play an even easier game. I'm going to play Stardust Gate. All right. There's a part of me that is thinking probably something that I need to do is that I absolutely positively need to freeze my dimensions when it comes to my stream screen. This is something that a lot of other people don't do. And, I don't know. I guess there's just still a part of me that, wants to frame everything a certain way. And it's also the fact that I don't necessarily have a screen window in the background that is 100% a 1920 by 1080. So I actually should, take some time in order to figure out what those donations are. All right. So Stardust Gate, I think this is a game that I've already played like 3 or 4 different times on stream. And the thing that I admire the most about it is that this is actually a game that is made by other VTubers, specifically the VTuban stream team, which has already made like 4 games that are currently on Steam right now. Okay, well, I just hit play. I didn't expect that I was playing as Eye Candy, but let's just go ahead and let's play as Eye Candy now. All right, so, this is pretty standard fare for endless runners, is that you move in one direction, you grab the stars. You also have the addition to boost yourself. You also have the option of jumping on obstacles and getting a boost that way. And then every character has a special ability that they can use to ignore obstacles or get extra stars for a while. All right. There we go. So there's a part of me that feels a little bit awkward because, I just dared a very large portion of my extended family to give donations to ASAN. And now all of a sudden I'm playing a game where I'm literally playing as a succubus riding a skateboard in a graveyard. Fantasy has always been just kind of an interesting sticking point for me because, okay, I've always been into tabletop. And, tabletop has always been one of those things that has been subject to concepts like the Satanic Panic, which happened to the 80s. I've also been fans of lots of different fantasy book series, and let me just go ahead and make this clear. There was never a time that I ever thought that any fantasy medium was inherently evil. I'm an intelligent person. I cut my teeth on stories like the Books of Narnia, which were actually written by somebody who was a very devout Christian and somebody who was using fantasy literature in order to describe specifically what it meant to them personally to be a Christian. So oftentimes this is treated as the most extreme example, but, it's also just kind of something that's worth mentioning because, stories are stories. In certain ways, stories have stories have a life to them. Stories have a visceral ability in order to express truth and people's feelings more than nonfiction even tends to be. I mean, you might have an opinion about a political view, but it's also just as likely you have an opinion of a political view based on the fact that you read Blade Runner at some point. That's probably the best way to put it. At one point, an author was trying to express to you what they personally believe in by writing a fictional story, and now that's stayed with you for a while. So I think I've mentioned their names several times on the stream before, but I used to have a really great English teacher. And one of the things that I can applaud this English teacher for is that when I was in high school, she was the first person who had me read two very important science fiction novels. One of them was Fahrenheit 451, the other one was Brave New World. And so some people would think that this is textbook. This is textbook when it comes to science fiction combined with metaphor. But again, what is significant about that is that, people, the authors that were writing this, they were writing about the apocalypse. They were writing about specifically what kind of things were going to lead us to the apocalypse. And that's very, 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 very significant because people were basically, looking at, what could potentially go wrong with our society as it is, and then they were trying to, give us fair warning about it. I think that these people have a lot of people these days, they have a tendency to talk about, what was their name? I forget the name of the specific book, but it was the one that coined the term Big Brother. It's just the science fiction apocalyptic novel that tried to give us warning about creating a surveillance state. All right, so I have a few seconds to check the board one more time. We got another $10. Thank you to Anonymous. It's more than likely my own aunt, because my own aunt, just kind of usually puts themselves down as anonymous. I'll respect it enough so as not to, actually say their name on stream. Let me put it that way. Pues pero es importante. It's important, It's important to me, and it's also, I think, in, the way that, okay, I'm going to get into we live in a society territory now, is that people have a tendency to just kind of devalue not only what you personally feel as important, but they also have a tendency to devalue your wants. And what I mean by that is that, okay, everybody has wants. Everybody has things specific in their life. But every time that somebody talks about something that they want in our society, people start immediately saying, well, that's awful selfish of you. You know, that's something that, you know, you really shouldn't be doing. Instead, you should be focusing on what's important for everyone, you know. But that's always something that's kind of been, well, once again, we're in the monkey paw situation. You know, people could either be sincerely wanting you to care about very important things that they believe in, but it's far more likely that, you know, people are also being selfish and they just want you to care about them and their needs over yours. You know, that's something that happens an awful lot. All right. Okie dokie, doing good. All right, round 2 in the books. Oh, actually, round 3. I think I just did the entirety of round 1 in my subconscious. You know. You know, one of the things I studied pretty significantly when I was in my first years of university was philosophy. And so there's one thing that, you know, philosophy just really has a really big hard-on for, and it's, you know, it's concepts surrounding consciousness and subconsciousness, you know. Oftentimes, the very first philosopher you ever hear about is Rene Descartes, you know, who coined the very famous term, I think, therefore I am. You know, there's a bunch of philosophical jokes about it. Descartes walks into a bar. The bartender asks, would you like something to drink? And Descartes says, I think not. And then he vanishes. That's the joke, you know. But then again, this is putting Descartes before the horse. Seriously, is just the simple fact that, you know, people are trying to legitimize themselves as, you know, what makes them distinct as human beings. And of course, one of those things is the ability to have logic, the ability to rationalize, you know, the ability to have a thought in your head even if you go out into the world and nobody believes that you do. You know, that seems especially poignant during today's stream. You know, and you're going to run into a lot of, and, you know, literally anybody, you're going to run into a lot of people who really don't share the same philosophy with you at all. You know, you're going to run into a lot of people who think that, you know, what you're thinking is potentially wrong. And, you know, but that's perfectly fine because, you know what, I would rather have the freedom in order to express myself, but also practice the responsibility of trying to express myself in the most accommodating and intelligent way as possible. You know, try to do everything that you can in a way where you don't have a beef with people, because having a beef with people is more than likely what is going to get you in trouble. You know, there are lessons that you know, left and right and up and down when it comes to thinking about this, because, well, we're basically putting ourselves in a situation where we're putting ourselves in a situation. Lost my train of thought there. Yeah, okay, it's not coming back. Sorry about that, folks. You know, well, anyways, what's really important to say about that is that, you know, you have to practice your own freedom of thought, but then you also just kind of have to be wary of how people are going to respond to these things. And when people are going to inevitably, you know, start to cut you down for what your belief systems are, then that's when you have to come up with good enough arguments in order to refute these ideas without being too disparaging to the other person. This is Communication Studies 101. And so out of the 4 degrees that I have, my largest degree is in Communication Studies. I have both a bachelor's and a master's in it. Well, I mean, it's kind of hard to say because at this point, if you have a bachelor's and a master's in anything, that just kind of basically says that you have a master's in something. It means that you've accumulated that much experience in one subject. You went from level 4 to level 8. For those of you in the chat that understand things in gaming terminology. You leveled up your degree from a 4 to an 8. And then if you go for your doctorate, you're going for your what is more than likely going to be your level 15. I used to do things like I used to read self-help books that put things 100% in gaming terminology. Gosh, at this point, I don't even remember what his name was, but the guy who was the founder of the Nerdist eventually got canceled, regrettably, because he was found sexually harassing a lot of the people who were working with him on the website. But I read his book, and his book was basically, go ahead and write, basically gave you the tip, go ahead and write your own character sheet. Get a notebook, get a piece of paper, and then just write down what your expectations and your goals are for the day, and then just go ahead and give yourself experience points, give yourself level ups, and, something like that. If that's the way you choose to journal and organize yourself, then that's perfectly fine. I don't personally have any kind of issue with that, The problem with journaling, particularly among neurodivergent people, is that it's really hard to do. Because when you're a neurodivergent person, your mind is like XYZ. It's a random numbers generator. It's all over the place. It's hard to, first of all, just get the time, give yourself the time and the attention that you need in order to properly journal. Okay, my run is finally over at the end of that. Okay. I went to level 6, so I just kind of played 2 more levels than the last time I checked. All right, so that's good. Well, as I said before, I just kind of stayed with the default character that I had. Let me see, who would I want to actually play as instead? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go play as Rose Doodle. Rose Doodle just kind of has a specialty to a special ability where they can collect all the stars on the screen, so which is just kind of very useful when it comes to this. All right. There's something just very personally enriching about the fact that you've seen that you're seeing people who are VTubers just taking their original characters and then putting them in new forms of media, especially media that you enjoy, like video games. It's something that I want to do, but it's something that I want to do down the lines. And, just kind of given what my overall success has been and my general level of popularity is, it probably isn't going to mean a lot to people, but it's still something that I really want to try to do, if that makes sense. And so I think I've already spilled the beans about my designs for making a video game. I wasn't on my channel. I was guesting on Gold T Fish's channel. Gold T Fish, he's another great streamer, and you should absolutely watch him. So anyway, as I was on Gold T Fish's channel, and I just kind of simply gave the offhand announcement is that I am trying my paw at making a visual novel, And it's a funny thing to think that, okay, well, I'm making a visual novel, but I'm Brainy the RPG Cat. I'm all about, this one very specific genre of gameplay. But, it honestly hasn't been like that. It hasn't been like that for the longest time. Brainy the RPG Cat, it means something entirely different to me now than it did when I first started streaming, because being the quote-unquote RPG cat is not necessarily about always locking yourself in on one genre and just doing nothing except playing that, because it's what your audience is going to expect. For me, I've kind of changed the definition of that within myself over time. And so this is what it means to me now. It just means that I have this very strong internal and spiritual connection to gaming, particularly gaming where you actually are introspective, and gaming where you actually engage in roleplay. I mean, so literally role-playing games like tabletop games, is something that I love to do. I love to roleplay. It doesn't matter what medium, but for the most part, I just kind of tend to lean a lot more towards tabletop games. And, there's something very valuable that I have learned personally and possibly even spiritually when it comes to being so connected with role-playing. And it's that, so many things in life, they're just kind of, you have a tendency in order to feel trapped in life. Eventually you give yourself the feeling that you don't just want to be plain old insert real name here, okay? You don't just want to be normie, everyday, run of the dump you for a good amount of time, I'm sure there's lots of people who would like you to be just plain you. And I virtually expect anybody who's your employer to stand at attention at this. Oh yeah, don't show any kind of individuality at all. Be as conformist as you possibly can. But sometimes that you get people who say, you can just go ahead and you can pretend that you're anything you want, but you don't have to lose the sight of who you are as an actual person, and there's a certain wisdom in that, is that you can't allow yourself to get so full of yourself that you're just going to go out in the world and tell people that you're your role play character and not who you genuinely are. That would be another fallacy in this whole argument. But what I would say, instead of everything that I have just gone over, what my personal life advice would be, is that you can go ahead and you can spend a significant amount of time pretending that you're something else, but it's still okay to do that really, really hard. It's okay to do that to a very strong extreme without losing all touch with reality. That's what my recommendation is. I'm not just this one character. As I've already told you, I have a creative writing degree, and anybody who has a creative writing degree has millions of characters in them, and they're talking to each other all the time, and they have different philosophies, and they have different values, and they just come from different places. But more importantly than all of that, they are human. They have thoughts, and they have feelings, and they have emotions. And as a writer, you're capable of feeling all of these completely fabricated thoughts and beliefs and emotions, and it's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing to me personally, so I say, if you feel the need in order to roleplay, commit to the roleplay for as long as you can possibly do it, and then go back to being yourself afterwards. Another example that I can use is, there's the fact that I started out in this because I just wanted to be a straight up fantasy character. Brainy literally came from Dungeons and Dragons sessions that I was playing when I was working on my master's degree. And then, when I decided to bring him to streaming, when I decided to bring him to streaming, I thought I was going to just portray him as a straight-up fantasy character. He came from Dungeons and Dragons. He was going to be committed to the fact that he was as biological a cat as you can possibly be, but still be talking and still be wearing wizard clothing. That was my original idea for Brady. Oh, I really should not have done that. I should not have hit my ult just then because the level was just ending. I don't know. At this point, I don't even really think that it's about the gameplay. I'm having just too much fun speaking into the void right now. And I'm okay with that. Anyway, where was I? Oh, yes. Oh, so, you know, very recently I changed Brainy pretty extremely. Is that, you know, not only is Brainy a character that is a straight-up fantasy character who happens to really love tabletop RPGs, but it's also the fact that he is a character that is a fantasy character, plays a lot of tabletop RPGs, but then I also added this third dimension to him where he's a 1940s animated cartoon character, you know. VTubing is an extremely creative genre. It's an extremely creative it's a, you know, in a funny way is that I kind of look at being a VTuber as also engaging in a very specific type of roleplay. You know, the kind where you build your own persona and then you have your own personas interact with other personas belonging to other people. And it, like, once again, is that I think that this is just chef's kiss. This is a truly beautiful thing that conscious, intelligent people can do with each other. You know, so there was a time when I thought that, you know, after so many years of, you know, streaming to dead air, that I was letting things stagnate a little bit. I was looking at Brainy and I was thinking, well, there are elements of Brainy that I don't think that I can truly bring justice to. You know, there are times when I wish I was a very photorealistic artist. And then what I would do in that situation is I would take Brainy. I would just draw him as a photorealistic cat wearing a wizard outfit. And then I would play him in precisely the way that is described. I would try to meld him as much into a straight-up J.R.R. Tolkien hardcore fantasy narrative as I possibly could. And I was getting frustrated with myself because I don't have like 2 or 3 of the skills that I just mentioned, you know. But before long is that I just kind of had this wild idea, you know, just this tiny bit of a brainchild in my head that grew. I think it started when I just drew a character design for a version of Brainy that was chasing another VTuber named Teddy Deadrat, who is, you know, a lab rat VTuber, and you know, and they were just chasing each other like Tom and Jerry. And I made this fan art and I gave it to him, and of course he loved it because let me also just give this to you as a tip, okay? VTubers, anybody who owns an OC, in fact, they love it when people draw their OCs. You should do that a lot, and you should give it to them, and you should make somebody happy. But anyways, I drew this fan art, and I gave it to Teddy, and he thought it was great. But after this kind of had something in my head, you know, something in the neighborhood of quite literally like 2 years ago, when I first created Brainy, there were times when I would just kind of make alternate PNGs of him. Is that I would make PNG tuber designs of him that look different. I made one in the Yu-Gi-Oh style, and I was using it so that I could play Yu-Gi-Oh Master Duel with my friend Hoff GMG and a lot of his friends, that we would all just get together regularly play Yu-Gi-Oh. So I just drew a Dark Magician version of Brainy, and that was that. But then there was also just a time when offhandedly I wanted to have one for the game Cuphead. So I did my, you know, 1920s Avatar version of Brainy, you know, black and white, you know, crested eyes, the whole 9 yards. And so I kind of made it like a little bit of a personal assessment of myself, is that I made this version of Brainy that was 100% an American cartoon. But then I also made a conscious decision to draw another one when I was making this fan art for Teddy Deadrat. So what I eventually ended up doing was that, let's say, Mickey Raton 50, thank you very much for following. I appreciate you. So, thank you and welcome to this very important stream. I hope you enjoy your time here with me, and also that you're also might be interested in donating to this 8-hour campaign that we're having for the Autistic Self-Advocacy Network. So, yeah, thank you very much. And, feel free to talk up in chat. I would love to chat with you. Gosh, where was I? I was talking about creating Brainy. So I had these two different designs for a classic cartoon version of Brainy, and then it just kind of dawned on me in that, just kind of eureka kind of way that, you know what, I could really just design Brainy just like a classic cartoon character, and that would solve a lot of the frustrations that I was having with my art and my inability in order to draw in a straight up fantasy way. So I said, look, why not? Let's go for it. Let's rebrand. Let's go ahead and, turn Brainy into an animated character and then just kind of play the ball where that lands. And that was the entirety of my philosophy when I came up with this month's story arc, which I've been calling Gamey Melodies, and then just redesigning Brainy as an animated character. Let me see, how else can I put this? Something that was really, really significant for me is that I told myself, if I'm going to do this, I don't want to be another rubber hose, because, the fact is that while there are lots of really great rubber hose VTubers, some of them who are, very close personal acquaintances to me, I didn't want to be one of them because I didn't have that very close association with rubber hose. Rubber hose, just was a version of this that kind of happened in the 1920s and 1930s, and it encapsulated characters like Betty Boop and Mickey Mouse and Felix the Cat. That wasn't me. Okay, I spent the entirety of my time when I was very young watching reruns of Looney Tunes and Tom and Jerry and MGM cartoons. And I love that. I personally, those are cartoons that, they make me very personally happy, So, it really helps me in order to draw a lot of energy from the belief that I'm not a rubber hose. I am quite literally a Tom and Jerry. I'm literally a Bugs Bunny or a Daffy Duck. I'm literally a character that's directly comes from the types of characters that I've loved for a very long time. It's such a good feeling, and it is, well, once again, it's an enormous shot in the arm for me creatively, because I can do things like every once in a while I can draw my own fan art. I've got it in me that, I want to draw movie posters that are based on hundreds of different fictional animated shorts that Brainy has been in since the year 1940. I've made like 3 of them so far. And then I also had the brilliant idea to include other VTubers in them, that when you watch an anime short, things are a lot more episodic than things are when you're like involved in something like a tabletop RPG. You find yourself in this, one cartoon where Bugs Bunny is drafted and he's in the army. You find him. Then you look at another cartoon where Bugs Bunny has been severely bullied by an opera singer, and as a result of that, he beats up on him while dressed up as Leopold Tchaikovsky. Cartoon characters in those days, they were just very, very versatile in that way. They went, character personality first. Everything else was something of an afterthought. And there's something, just wonderfully spherical about that. So in homage to that is that I've been, drawing all of these movie posters on Blue Sky. And I've just been providing, and then I've just been dropping them off along with, fictional paragraph summaries of what the cartoon was about. The very first one I did about this was called phew, I already forgot about it. I'm going to describe the second one. Is that I made a Brainy movie poster that, just kind of paid direct homage to one of my favorite cartoons, which is Red Hot Riding Hood. And I'm using modern terminology in an environment that was supposed to be 100% 1940s. I called it Red Hot Tiefling Thought. And it's basically about Brady trying to get in the door of an exclusive club so that he can try to flirt with the very beautiful tiefling cocktail waitress that he has there. And that was the storyline that kind of popped into my head because of my love of this particular cartoon series. Veloshi, hello, welcome to chat. Thank you very much for tuning in. I'm going to be streaming a long time today, and I'm also going to be collecting money for charity. So I do really appreciate your likes. I really would appreciate your follows if you are able to do that. But in the meantime, I'm 100% glad that you're here. Thank you very much for tuning in. And also, how are you doing today? That's a very important thing to always ask, I want to be out here. I want to be friendly. So thank you. Thank you very much for tuning in. I would love to hear about your day, etc., etc. Now I'm overstating it. That's what my problem is. All right. Okay, on we go. It's so great to have a birthday fall on a Sunday and Easter and just an opportunity where people have every excuse in the whole world to not be in work, and so that I can actually give a lot of time and attention to what I'm trying to do today, and also that you're giving it to me. So I'm incredibly grateful for that. Hello, Veloci. Thank you very much for following. I see you. Streamlabs has kind of been a fickle mistress to me lately, so I don't think that the notifications are showing up. But thank you so much for thank you very, very much for giving me that follow. I might just have them turned off in OBS. That's another thing that I need to do. I need to just go back and I need to fix all of my gadgets in OBS, so they're once again in an order that I need. See, just now I heard the sound effect, but I didn't actually see the pop-up. So yeah, I think that's more than likely what people have done for me. I also do believe that we just got another donation. Let's check the board here. Let me take a look here. I don't know how I got away from the dashboard. Yeah, I want to refresh this page. Okay, no, well, that very last one was just the last $10 I got from Anonymous. So once again, thank you for everybody that there. Okay, so this is my in real life birthday. Okay, flesh and blood. Born in the old-fashioned way. Me was born on April 20th. My stream anniversary is in March. I believe it's on March the 30th. There's always kind of a bit of a push to okay, there's only 4 characters here, so I'm gonna play this one again. So as I'm saying, yeah, this is my human flesh vessel birthday, And, I've always had a certain pride in being born on April the 20th, because April the 20th means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. And so, me being the very, highly introspective person that I am, I just kind of love to think about, what all these different things mean. And that's just kind of part of the thought exercise I have every time I get a year older, is that I just think about, how important 420 is to a lot of people, even if all those meanings don't have anything to do with the fact that it's my birthday. Happy celebrations to your flesh and blood, then. Oh, Veloci. Oh, it does me so good in order for you to make that joke. Oh. All right. So anyways, I was playing a video game or something here. Something else that, is probably a big characteristic of my neurodivergence is that I remember birthdays going as far back as when I was 4 or 5 years old. And when you're 4 or 5 years old, you're just this very weird and fickle thing that all of your preferences have a tendency to turn in a dime. I remember being 5 years old and having a meltdown in the middle of Chuck E. Cheese because I was scared of eating a slice of pizza. And the reason I was scared of eating a slice of pizza is because it had cheese on it. And at the time, I didn't believe I'd ever eaten cheese. I don't know if I've ever eaten cheese because, there was a time when I was a toddler, and it was more than likely my parents fed me cheese every once in a while. But at that time, I was just really afraid to eat cheese. This is how I remember my 5th birthday party. And it's also highly ironic because the fact is that now cheese is absolutely one of my favorite foods. I eat tons of it. In evenings when I just want a digestive, I grab a whole bunch of cheese and then I eat it on top of wheat crackers and table crackers, and I eat it together with salami and cold cuts and things like that, And it's something that I almost directly picked up from the Wallace and Gromit cartoons, because that's precisely what he would do, is that it was just it was a priority for Wallace in the Wallace and Gromit films. He always needed to have both cheese and crackers on his person at all times. As a kid, I didn't like cheese either. Yeah. As now, not only do I like cheese, but I'm very discriminating about cheese, and my mom and dad, they're somewhat with me on this, because they always have a block of standard white cheese like Munster, and then also a big block of cheddar. It could be any grade of cheddar. It could be extra sharp cheddar. It could be mild or medium cheddar. That always changes depending on their mood, but it's always cheddar. And I love cheddar too. There's nothing better than it. It is without a doubt my favorite type of cheese. But then also I have ventured a little bit further than that. One of the things that I eat that I believe that my parents never eat is that I eat brie cheese. And I also eat brie cheese with chutney. Or even if I don't have chutney, I'll just get a nice mild flavored jam, and that's how I'll eat my brie. I love it when a food is so varied that you can do different types of how should I put this? That there's great varieties of one type of food, and then you can go ahead and you can mix and match it based on what your palate is like at the time, what your preferences are. I love sausages that were filled with cheese, so my parents would call them butter sausages. Okay. I'm a little bit off on the distinction of that. They would call them butter sausages, but they were actually cheese sausages. Maybe your parents used to call them that when you didn't necessarily like cheese. Maybe that's what we're grabbing at right now. And Veloci says that she also really loves brie, so... Oh, I said she. It's probably they, at least for now. When I have pronoun trouble, I just want everybody to know it is quite literally because, I am speaking very rapidly, which is something that I quite often do. But anyways, yeah, brie is the best. Brie is kind of the... the way I like to put it, it's like the whiteboard of cheeses, is that it's very mild in the middle. It has a little bit of a sharpness in the rind, but then, just for the greater part of it, it is really just a relatively neutral flavor. And so it goes really well with jam, which I already mentioned I love to do. But it also goes really well with like any salted meat that you want to put on it. I know somebody who always said that they love to take their brie, melt it on top of fries or onion rings, and that's also something that you can do. But, now that I'm in my 40s, I have a tendency to try to skip deep fried food whenever possible. So, I'm more than happy in order to chase that with something else entirely. That's another, part of the tapestry, is that, due to the fact that I've gotten so old and there's so many fattening foods that I can't eat anymore, I still have a tendency to want to binge a lot on just cheese, because having fat and potentially the danger of cholesterol is not as damaging to me as, the possibility of eating French fries at this point. So I'm going to go with that. That's just the way that I'm going to advance from this point forward. Oh, I think you missed a message as a kid. I also didn't like cheese, so you're right. Yeah. Well, it's an acquired taste, and I think that the most important tastes in the world are acquired tastes. There are the things that you like to eat that absolutely nobody likes to eat. And so my parents were very intelligent when it came to this, is that because they tried to introduce me to a lot of different foods when I was very, very young. And there's things that like never stuck. My dad loves to eat sardines. I can't stand it, But, they were actually managed to talk me into eating canned smoked oysters. There was a lengthy period of time when I was eating fresh oysters, but I literally quit that afterwards because I made myself extremely sick once. I gave myself literal food poisoning once with a fresh oyster. So now I'm just sticking to the canned and smoked ones. I like fish, but I do have a tendency to, not want to eat just plain white fish, and then I want to search for very strong different varieties of fish. If you're a regular watcher of the stream, you'll find that in character I have a tendency to talk a lot about sushi, and that's quite literally what is something that drives me personally, is that I love sushi, because sushi is just it's a flavor sensation. It's lots of different types of flavors all at once. It's a flavor composition, and that's what I love about sushi, not just the fact that it's fish. Ooh, I like that one. Is that I got a new board back, and it is 100% buff pup. So, I'm quite literally have found my zen, and I'm now of two minds. There's a part of me that's playing the game, and then there's a part of me that's talking to chat. I love that feeling, because once again is that, I really, really just love the sensation of being able to work with multiple parts of my brain at once, Okay, I've actually gotten 2 donations, both of them from family members. Thank you to Margarita Gary. Thank you from Mikey, Ruby, and Jacob. The both of you donated $50 to the campaign. That puts us at a current total of $235. So, gosh, I couldn't be more happy that I actually gave the link to my fam today, because now they're coming out in force. And so, I think we went from talking about cheese and fish, and maybe before long we'll talk about every single one of my food preferences. But I'm also just going to switch to this really badass looking board. I think I want this one with lavender wheels. Okay, I have one more turn on the gacha. Let's see what else I have. Okay, well, this one is just a junk. All right. I done got myself a Rubik's Cube. You know. And, as much as I personally love to brag about, how much I love strategy games, never in my entire life, hand to God, have I ever solved a Rubik's Cube. These days it's actually kind of easy to solve a Rubik's Cube. Instructions are on the web. They say that once upon a time that there was a time when Rubik's Cube solving classes were offered as elective courses in universities. These days, people have got the Rubik's Cube down to the point where they can basically just give you a 4-step process to solve them. Just keep rotating everything in this exact same direction, in this exact same pattern until all of the colors align. I gave myself some pretty distinct challenges once upon a time. There was a time that I owned a Hello Kitty Rubik's Cube. And so that's challenging not because, that's challenging because, even though everything is also the same color, everything is also of a very unique pattern. And, they also have very distinct characters on them. So just by making that little bit of change to a Rubik's Cube, it makes a Rubik's Cube a lot more complex, Usually when I'm playing these streams, usually when I'm doing these streams, I tend to play games where I personally challenge myself. My current challenge lately has been trying to teach myself Mahjong. And we actually might play Ao Tenjo, the single-player Mahjong game, while we're playing this. While we're in the middle of the Streamathon, that actually might be something I might start. So anyway, what was I grabbing at this? I love to challenge myself. Something that's been on the docket for me for a while is that I'm actually trying to learn Tarot. Tarot is like a 48 card deck that requires an enormous amount of memorization. The people who do tarot readings are actually pretty eidetic people because they're people who have actually been able to rotely learn what every single card means. And that's a pretty big undertaking, You have to be really into tarot in order to master tarot. And while, I don't really have much of a belief in spirituality or mysticism myself, personally, I do have just the strongest amount of respect and admiration for people who can just do that amount of memorization. A little bit earlier today, I was talking about journaling, and I told you about, the Nerdist creator who actually managed to create a form of journaling that is based on tabletop role-playing. To summarize it, it's basically just turning yourself into a character sheet. I know that there's an enormous amount of people who also use tarot when they are journaling. Because tarot, more important than tarot as like this strange, dark, and mystic way in order to tell a fortune for yourself, tarot is also just an enormous tool for people to get their ideas sorted out. And also just kind of get, grab a handful of advisory statements about, the things that they might be planning immediately. The practice of drawing a tarot card, it requires you to, first ask the tarot a question. Is that, this is like saying a prayer. You're asking the universe, what is most important to me in that moment? You say that, and then you start to draw tarot cards. Tarot cards are all read in a way where they have a very specific description that, helps to give you just kind of generalized notes about, the way that things might potentially be able to turn out. The people who regularly read their horoscopes, they have a very strong understanding of this. The tarot is just made out of, descriptors of concepts that could potentially happen given any kind of special scenario. So, in much the same way that you are shuffling cards, you're also shuffling universal truths and concepts and possibilities, And for people who, are pretty deep and varied thinkers, much like the way that I'm probably demonstrating myself to be right now, that's a really wonderful way to look at things, because you're putting yourself in a situation where you're just kind of creating scenarios for yourself, when it comes to anything that is considered to be spiritual, not even necessarily religious, but a practice that people have followed for a very long time, even though it's not necessarily truthful, that it's not necessarily based on fact, it still just kind of has a points of interest in it. A very long time ago, I actually had this Christianity put into me in exactly this way, is that the distinct advantage of being a Christian is the fact is that every single night you have a tendency to commit yourself to prayer. What prayer basically does is prayer activates a part of your brain that allows you to understand what might be a priority in your life, and then it galvanizes you. It gives you the faith and the strength in order to carry out the things that you feel like you need to do. It's pretty easy to say that prayer is meditation and meditation is prayer, because they both do the exact same things. They center you and they focus you on an outcome of that helps you to manifest, things inside of your mind that you then put a lot of work into in order to accomplish. So if there's ever, even, in this really trying periods of time where, there's actually some pretty distinct reasons not to like, specific types of religious groups, I never personally discount the practices of a religious person, because they are actually very strong intellectual means of making personal change, Okay, and that's the end of that particular rant. So, anyways, is that, because, I just have these very versatile thoughts when it comes to spirituality, I have a tendency to actually look at multiple different spiritualities. Not only am I pretty well versed in the Bible, I'm also pretty well versed in the Dhammapada, which is the book that was written as the principal book that guides Buddhism. Literally, just this great variety of letters written by the Buddha himself that help you to understand what the philosophy of Buddhism is. I have an acknowledgement that there's lots of people who have combinations of religious beliefs. When I was very young, I was very strengthened by the belief that, I was witnessing individuals who were claimed to be both Christian and Jewish. And so if you spend any amount of time, studying any amount of theism, the simple fact that Jesus was Jewish. And so, when it comes to wanting to emulate a religious figure and their religious practices, that's such a pure thing, is that, okay, not only do I want to be Jesus, but I also want to worship the same way that Jesus did. And Jesus worshipped as a Jew. That's an incredible intellectual acknowledgement of that. By saying all this, I don't want to actually, make it sound like I'm making any kind of recommendations here. This is just me describing the way that I personally tend to hash out these concepts in my mind. You can definitely put it that way. you know, some people might actually find it offensive that, eventually I'm just kind of acquiescing to a pick and choose sort of way of engaging in my own spirituality, But, my response to that is, it's kind of that it is and it isn't, I'm a dyed in the wool, ideas type of person, and I love that about myself. So, what I'm indulging in all of this more than anything else is the fact that, there's hundreds of different ways of looking at things. And I love to look at things hundreds of different ways. The more you understand about the way that, people conduct themselves as far as, communication and culture and religion and spirituality, the more of a versatile person that you can be. And once you can do that, you put yourself in a position in order to be kind and peaceful and benevolent and understanding to lots of different kinds of people. Whether or not that they deserve that, that's probably something that I consider to be for the history books. If there's one group that just causes so much damage to another group, then, they are more than welcome to hop right into the dustbin of history. That's probably as cruel as I like to be when it comes to talking to people I have a dissenting opinion with, A lot of this kind of came to me, just as I was growing up, because, I'm the youngest of three, and, there was always just kind of this little brotherish sense within me that always that tends to dictate, well, okay, I want you to hear me out. I want you to hear me out. This was the only thing I ever asked when I was a preteen and when I was a teenager, probably all the way until I was in my first year of community college. I would always do this to people. Hey, would you hear me out? Hey, would you listen? Hey, would you be able to see things my way? This was always the way that I would talk to other people, because I wanted something very deep within myself, and it was just this want to be understood and to be taken seriously. I think maybe these, and I would, well, let me put it this way. I would want these things. I wouldn't know how to make them happen until I could honestly say that I probably trailed all the way until I was 30 years old, trying to figure out, how I can actually, manifest the ability to have people to listen to me and take me seriously. But eventually I did manage to do it, and it was just the simple fact that I relaxed a lot about myself. And so once I was able to be relaxed, I was able to give freely about the things I believed in, and then eventually people were able to listen to me. I became listen-able. I became somebody who is capable of being listened to, and that's how I got people to listen to me. It almost sounds fundamental. It sounds like a no-brainer. But, I know that a lot of people struggle with this, is that a lot of people are just kind of out there trying to figure out how they fit into the world, Going into neurodivergent terms, people tend to look at that as being like the philosophical puzzle piece, which also, let me go ahead and tell you that that's entirely wrong, and that's a totally incorrect way to look at autism, I much prefer the metaphor of being part of a spectrum, being part of a possibility, Since I'm also a digital artist, I have a tendency to look at palettes a lot, A palette is just something that, is an individual image that contains all of the images of all of the different colors that you can possibly create inside of one art program. And that's kind of the way that I tend to look at neurodivergence and autism. I tend to look at it as a palette, Some people are red, some people are green, some people are blue, some people have a significant amount of white in them, some people have a significant amount of black in them, It's just, changes, difference in shades, differences in hues, if you can just think of like one color, like suppose you thought of blue, and you can think of all of the different shades of blue that you can possibly think of. That's the way that I have a tendency to look at the spectrum, And that's not even a misnomer, because colors are a spectrum, and people are a spectrum. It's a wonderful thing. It's quite literally the way that I like to look at things, because it's quite honestly one of the most honest ways in order to look at things. Okay, well, I have been on my soapbox for a significant amount of time, and as I'm doing that, I'm also just subconsciously rolling my way through all of these games I intended to play for an 8-hour stream. So let me take a moment in order to, well, first of all, I'm going to look at the board again, see if there's been any changes to this. Yeah, we're still at 235, but also, yeah, thank you very much to Margarita, Mikey, Ruby, and Jacob for giving your $50 donations. That is top drawer. That has helped us out an awful lot. So thank you. There are not enough thank yous to be said. I am so glad that, my streaming today has worked out in order to add a significant amount of additional donations to the month-long donathon that I do every April for Autism Awareness Month. All right, so let me see. Blurb, Streamlabs. Okay, so let me see what else we have here. I'm basically looking at this as just anything that I can potentially think of as potentially wanting to play. My eyeballs are pretty deeply embedded on UFO 50 right now, because when I play UFO 50, I don't even have to bother with switching games in Steam. I can just play the compilation of games that's in UFO 50. But, there's a lot of games that I currently have on my list that I haven't even played yet. There's some very, very tiny games that I can just download just like that. As a matter of fact, I'm going to do that, and this is probably going to be the next game that I'm going to play. Let me see. Okay. So, yeah, I'm going to just take a few minutes in order to download a game here. And this is something that has always been very distinctly part of my personality, is that, being neurodivergent to me has always been like being like a random numbers generator. Is that my mind is always bouncing quite rapidly from one concept to the next. There's lots of people in the world that kind of just feel like, okay, well, we almost never understand what Brainy is saying, but then there's also just this other very great group of people who understand what I'm saying all the time, because they're actually on the exact same level that I am. And, maybe it's because they also have neurodivergences, but, I just kind of prefer to think that, I'm meeting people on my own level. And, okay, so I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to start our next game now. This is a game that's this is another indie game. This is from Dream Potion, which I believe is a Middle European company. And this one is called Mago. Well, maybe it's called Mago, but it's, Mago. And let me see if I can actually get this one on the game capture. If I don't, I might have to go with display capture. Maybe I can do full screen application. Nope, that doesn't seem to be working either. Okay, I might actually have to do a display capture here. Okay, wrong screen. This one. Still no. Oh no, that's actually because I had that open. And now I can open the game. Okay, now we can finally play this. So Mago is, once again, one of these Middle European independent games that is incredibly similar to 16-bit platformers of the time. And so, you know, you have a platforming protagonist, and in this game, your platforming protagonist just happens to be a mage, you know, who casts magic probably in the same way that Mario throws fireballs. You know, it's a really great game. It's a really great looking game, and it's a sleeper hit too. You know, I wish more people knew about it because it actually is incredibly well made. You can already, you know, just by going through the opening cutscenes, you can see just how plain beautiful all of the sprite work is in this game. You know, I do love this game, particularly when it comes to, you know, its gameplay variation, but it's also pretty significant to mention that the bosses in this game are equally as hard as the bosses in Cuphead. So call that fair warning if you like. All right. So here Majo's with his girlfriend. You know, a magician is showing him a few tricks, but then rather unceremoniously, he makes his girlfriend disappear. And then just kind of wanders away before he can do anything about it. And so now he is Arthur in Ghosts and Goblins, is that he has to reconcile with the fact that he's been duped, and now he has to save his girlfriend. Alright. You know. In this game, you have the ability to, you know, just shoot wands, like... Okay, something is going... Oh, hang on a second. Something is kind of funny with the controls right now. I wonder if there's something I can do about that. Up. I mean, the only thing that is concerning me right now is the fact that in my controls, it seems like he seems to be jumping and... Okay, here they are. No, actually, you know, the funny thing is that I believe that that's the way that's supposed to be. If I hit default, it's going to be. So, something I have to do while I'm playing this, I do have to anticipate jumping every time I fire my projectile, you know? Okay. Literally the way that it's designed. Okay, so... Shucks. Here I went and I said all of these very nice things about this game, and now I'm just having a difficulty with the basic controls. How do you like them apples? Alright. So, once again, it's that Majo has the ability in order to jump, shoot, and then also he should have the ability to jump on top of his stars and then use that as a boost. But it's kind of hard to do from the ground because, as I said, he jumps every single time he fires a projectile. So they're trying to teach me a combo here. Oh. Because you're supposed to be fast enough to be able to use your wand and double jump. Maybe I'm overthinking this. First I should attack and then use the jump. There we go. I kind of did a wide jump that way. Don't necessarily know if that was the way that should be done. Okay. Then you have the ability to grab a key. So, there's also a situation where you can stun enemies, and then after you stun enemies, you can use them to bounce off of. Hey, Mickey Raton! Thank you very much for wishing me a happy birthday. How are you doing today? Thank you very much for tuning into the stream. Up. So, forgive me a little bit if I'm not as conversationable, just as in the moment I'm dealing with a bit of a fickle platformer right now. I'm doing great, my cousin Vinny. Thank you very much for tuning in. So, I can already see that this is more than likely my cousin Mikey. Thank you also for giving the $50 donation to the Donathon. You guys are quite literally helping me make this into the best birthday ever. Oh, how did you know? Well, what can I say? I'm your cousin Vinny. You know that I've always been exactly this insightful. Let me see. The funny thing about this is that, there's no way to keep yourself from both jumping and shooting. Alright. Alright, well... Okay. Well, at minimum, I actually managed to get through the tutorial. That's a good sign, allegedly. Okay, so now I'm on the map screen. So, yeah. No Mario games today? Well, unfortunately, I'm not going to be playing Mario games for a very long time for the simple fact that I sold my Switch. I sold my Switch, and I don't mind saying it, is that I fully anticipate imported games to get really, really expensive right now because of what's going on in the political landscape. So I made the conscious decision I'm not going to play imported games for the entirety of the time that this is going to happen. I did something, but I also did something really good for myself, and that is I bought a Steam Deck. So my main game console, other than my PC right now, is my Steam Deck. Helldivers, I don't own it at the moment, and so I'm probably not going to be able to get to that. I play some arena games right now. The one arena game that I'm playing the most is Marvel Rivals. Marvel Rivals, it's a free-to-play. If you wanted to try to get on that, then I would be more than happy to accommodate, boo. How about Warhammer? Warhammer is a broad topic, specifically which Warhammer. 40K. Well, Warhammer 40K, that's the general name of it. I'm also asking about what specific spin-off video game in Warhammer 40K are you talking about? They all have subtitles. You have to go with the subtitle. Are you talking about Vermintide? Are you talking about Ogres and Blood? Are you talking about Space Marine 2? Let me check that one, because I don't know if I own that specific one. Space Marine 2. See. So once again, scroll down to where I have my W's, because they all start at Warhammer. I also have Total War Warhammer, and I also have Blood Bowl, which is a spin-off game of Warhammer. Let me see. These days I think they don't even bother putting Warhammer in the front. They always put Warhammer in the back. I have Warhammer Power Wash Simulator, if you can believe that. Let me see. What was this name? Warhammer Space Marine 2. So I just want you to know that this isn't on you. This is just quite literally how difficult that this can be. Unfortunately, yeah, I'm not going to be able to download that. It would be $40, and I just don't have the money on me at the moment. So, feel free to, keep making suggestions. Eventually, we're going to land on something that I have on my $700 Steam list, my 700 game Steam list right now. Do you want me to gift you Helldiver? No, I can't ask you that because you've already given $50 to campaign. I had to be doing this, is that I know that you've helped me out pretty significantly today, and now I just keep saying no. I'll panhandle for the cash. All right. You've talked me into it, cousin. You know, as I'll just go ahead, I'll play this while he manages to do that. Also, you'll be able to find me on Steam as Brainy the RPG Cat, so that's where you'll be able to send that. Alright. Oh, drat. Heh. Simple mistake made in a platformer. It happens to the best of us. Going back to the Mario example, as weak as a Goomba is, everybody has died from a Goomba. Alright. Many, many times. See, it doesn't matter how weak a Goomba is, you have died from hundreds of them. Okay, we're going to be going back into our next 2-minute ad break in a moment. Stay tuned to the stream. We've got lots more coming. We've got a whole 8-hour stream coming. All right. Still gonna plug our way through this for a little bit. All right. I pretty strongly feel like that was my lone that was just the first level. I barely made it through it because, like I said, I'm actually just kind of zooming through game titles today, just doing things semi-unconsciously. You know, that more than likely will change by the time that, you know, my cousin actually gifts me this multiplayer game, because then I'm going to have to lock in on my multiplayer. Oh, wow, I'm getting... Okay, I'm in an endless runner all of a sudden. I don't know why you have to be a penguin in order to be endless running, but this game makes you into a penguin while you're endless running. All right. Up. Okay, we're back. So that was just kind of the end of the ad break. You know, for those of you who are just watching Twitch list standard, thank you everybody for staying tuned in to the stream. Okay. Let me take a moment in order to, well, let me just go ahead and quit out of this, and then I'm just going to facilitate the rest of this purchase. All right. Now, how do I get out of this? Now that I've made myself, now I've gotten myself into this. Oh, drat. Okay, well, I had to Steam stop, which is not necessarily the way that I wanted to do that, but... Alright, so... Okay, so... You know, just as a precaution, I am going to... I'm going to take your Steam code from this message, but then I'm also going to mod this so that, you know, just people won't find your Steam code randomly floating in my chat room. You know, let's see. Um, just for your future information, Steam does have also have DMs and friends lists, so you can use that the next time you want to send me something. You tried, yeah. This is more than likely the first time that you've ever spent on the website, so all is forgiven. Say, you send Steam gifts often. Well, that's actually something we have in common. I send Steam gifts often to my friends and so on. Okay, let's see. It's so strange. Why am I not a mod in my own chat? Yeah, you found me finally. I had put the URL up, in those DMs that had actually landed to buy you here, but then also somebody else posted the direct link to the the donation board itself. So I'm sure there was more than a little confusion there. You know, this is the way. This is the way. This is basically how I've just chosen to live my life from this point forward. Okay, so let me see. Stream friend code. Add a friend. Okay. Okay, I just sent you the invite. So now you'll be able to do the gift. Is a thing that I'm looking up Steam chat tutorials while I'm in the middle of this streamathon. You know, this also happens a lot when you're a streamer. It's kind of colloquially referred to as scuff. Sometimes people experience slowdowns in what they're doing simply because they're actually working within Twitch's interface. All right. Okay, I had a pending invite a moment ago. Now go to my friends list. Fire Slayer. Helldivers 2. Oh man, where do I redeem a Steam gift? Okay, manage gifts and guest passes. All right. Pending gifts. Helldivers 2. There it is. All right. Okay, 93 gigabytes. This is going to take a little while to download. I'll install it into this hard drive. Okay, well, saying play it now is unfortunately not going to make the download any slower. I appreciate you for all your patience with me, cousin, because yeah, so unfortunately things don't happen as instantaneously as the web makes it look sometimes. Yeah, it will be a while. In the meantime, I'm going to pick out another indie. Let's see what we could possibly play right now. Oh, I know what would be very highly amusing for the cousin that I'm watching. I'm going to play some Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Splintered Fate. That's a very fun game. Let me see. Where did I put that? If you're familiar at all with the game Hades, is the very famous roguelike dungeon crawler game. This is basically that, but it's also Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. All right, we're going to go ahead and we're going to play some of this right now. Yeah, 7-Eleven and Pop Rocks, you know it. I am nothing if not nostalgic, is that I am here before you as a cat with a 1940s cartoon character design. Let's see. See, for a half second, this game totally locked my mouse into it, but you're gonna hear the theme music on it right now. There we go. So, since once again these are this is a roguelike, I can just play using my previous save file. Way back in the day, this was quite literally the cousin that I would occasionally meet with at the arcade and then play the original TMNT arcade game, which I also have a Steam version of.
Sometimes you just gotta shake things up.
All right. So, like I said, this is a roguelike. You have an opportunity to pick out like 2 or 3 fixed different types of weapons. Something that, will give you special properties as you begin the run, and then afterwards you get power-ups as you're doing the run. Like I said, exactly like in Hades. Let me see. Foot Clan Medallion enhances flame powers. Manhole covers enhances water powers. Bonus scrap when getting Mausers. I have a feeling I need to just grab a lot of currency right now, so I'll go ahead and pick that one up. Dragon coin upgrades. Swiftness. Astral. Bonus pizza. That just kind of helps me to get extra health whenever I pick up a health power up. All right. So, yeah, I'll just do this first run as Mikey because everything's all set up for me.
Yours feel just like home.
All right. Let's see. Well, you give me a slightly more definitive answer if you wanted to, is that you could ask me if if you've ever played Hades. Yeah, this is a really cool game. This was a game that actually originally released on the Apple Store, but now it just has a Steam version. A little bit of a sleeper when it comes to all the really popular Ninja Turtles games, but don't need pizza just yet. I'll grab the currency.
I'm a scrap billionaire.
All right. It's also 4-player multiplayer. So, very recently there have been, just versions of games that, like, they put hundreds of different types of Ninja Turtles games, and a great deal of them just mimic that 1990s arcade game that we used to play in the arcades all the time. Probably the biggest budget one at the moment is a little game called Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Shredder's Revenge, and it's incredibly short. It's just as long as the arcade game was. But then it just got an enormous amount of DLC, extra characters, extra gameplay modes. So, there's still a lot of life in it. That's also one that's, worth looking into. If you type TMNT into Steam, there's lots of games that are relatively inexpensive, and you would be very pleasantly surprised by them. It's worth saying that it was good that I hung on to my nostalgia, because there's still an enormous amount of very good video games built around it. All right. So they're not offering me anything but currency, but there's also the difference between post-game currency and also, permanent upgrade currency, so I have to make that choice. All right. Well, I've taken a little bit of damage, and these are some of the introductory levels, but I'm really happy that, I've taken very little damage. You have to deal with a lot in this game. Poisons, spinning rats are the least of your problems. Yeah, all right. Okay, choice of turtle powers. Basically, properties of the other three turtles you can add to yourself. Shurikens are a boomerang that returns to your current position. Shurikens can now ricochet. Shurikens now apply guard break to enemy targets. Actually, that's probably the best choice. Now, when I hit anybody with a projectile, that means that I can actually break their shield, which is incredibly useful. Okay. Especially in the later episodes. Even in that, very old original arcade game, enemies had the ability to block while you didn't, which has always been something that I've considered to be really unfair. All right. Let me see. 50% elemental damage. That's a good one. Something that I like about roguelikes is that, the power-ups are really top-notch simply because they need to be. Because they're always going to be different every time you lose a life. All right. So, way back in the day, we used to play games on systems like the Atari and the NES, and even the Commodore 64, in my cousin's case. And these used to be just very intentionally hard games. I mean, arcade games, just right on their heads. They were created in order to chew up quarters. But then also just, games like Mega Man and Ninja Gaiden and things like that were just intentionally hard because they wanted you to lose all your lives, use up all your continues, and then have to start over from the very beginning. And then afterwards they would just tell you to get good. All right. La 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 la. Okay, well, this is a chest that allows me to change what my main medallion is, but I'm not going to do that. Of course, I'm going to need pizza at this point. 69 out of 87 HP. That's pretty good. Let me see any other scrap that I can spend right now. Ride the wave, elemental dashing. That's pretty good. Tool charge. That's also good because that means that when I get those armor breaking shurikens, then I'll be able to recharge them really quickly. Okay, time for your first impromptu boss battle. Since this is a roguelike, I must have fought Leatherhead about like 50 times by now. He's not much of a thing. He was certainly a lot more challenging the very first time I fought him, but that's because I didn't have any level ups going for me. Alright. So, Leatherhead is a character. Okay, yeah, of course he had his action figure from the 1987 cartoon, but he's also, like, in every single version of Ninja Turtles continuity they ever created. This version of him is actually just as much of a ninja as the Turtles is. Which is badass, of course. Okay. Doing a little bit worse than I probably should be right now. Oh yeah, I'm really hurting. I guess I'm a little bit rusty. I haven't picked this up in a while. Up. There we go. All right. Hello, Queen Vampiress. Thank you very much for tuning in. How are you doing today? Very good to see you. Like I said, is that, I'm putting a great amount of emphasis on how special today's stream is. So, Mickey Rotona is my IRL cousin. I think he's AFK at the moment, but we are going to more than likely hear from him eventually. He was kind enough in order to gift me Helldivers 2 for my birthday, so we're going to take a whack at that later during this stream. Okay. I technically lost my life, but I also had what is the equivalent of a continue loaded in me, so it didn't do me too much damage. You can imagine games like this are really, really hard to play single player. Up. Yeah, okay, that was messy as hell, but at least I lived through it. All right. Well, they're kind enough to me in order to give me a semi-complimentary pizza at the beginning of my next level run. You know, the downside to one of the downsides to roguelike is the fact that nobody can say anything too specific, you know, because you're doing multiple runs, so it's kind of hard to keep a straight storyline. Okay, I need tool charges like nobody's business because I still want to use that shield breaking shuriken when I get to those really cheap enemies that are always blocking. So say hi to Queen Vampiress. She's one of my, what we typically refer to here on Twitch as my mods. Somebody that I've actually given a little bit of chat control over. All right. So once again, a little bit more unnecessary, you know, conversational plot going on right now. You know. I recommend any people play this game, so if you actually want to know what they're saying in the dialogue, feel free to download this game. Okay. I'm already in trouble again because, you know, I had so little health after the boss fight. Yeah, I'm already hurting just fighting a few minor bad guys. You know, having those very large tank-like Mausers on the field are not helping. Wow, okay. I'm still alive, but that makes my health bar right there look non-existent. You know. I'm virtually counting on every single one of my rewards to at least have one pizza in it. That's the game taking pity on me. Oh, that one hurt. That one really, really hurt. This guy with the two-handed sword is really hacking into me right now. Okay. Okay, I used my second continue now. The only thing that is keeping me alive is like 2 or 3 permanent continues that I have managed to put into my loadout before I decided to leave. You know, we're not even at the beginning of the enemy run in this section right now. You know, like I said, the 1 foot with the great big broadsword is the guy that I really have to watch out for here. Okay, 27 dragon coins. Regrettably, I did not get a health pickup. I am at death's door at this point. I'm probably not going to make it through this round. Let me see. Temporary boost to my tools damage, which is, once again, I'm trying to boost tools as I'm going through all of this. Alright. Yee, ouch. They're coming out of the woodwork. Well, as you would expect them to do. You know. Bunch of tiny robots that are burrowing out of the ground and crap. Well, that's it. That's the end of my run right there. Like I said, it was probably pretty messy. So, let me see. I think I've got some coins to spend on permanent upgrades. Let me see. I've already bought the ones that are in red. Okay, so there we go. 2 sets. Well, that by itself just kind of gives an overall boost to the health I get from pizza, which is useful. So then I also have another... I have another hub for purchases here. Okay, it's this one right here. Let me see. A +4 chance of drawing turtle powers in room awards. I don't know how personally useful that one is. It's probably the only one that I haven't bought yet in that column, though. At the very start of the run, get 50 scrap. Okay, that's actually useful. You know, every once in a while, if I talk to NPCs while I'm in the lair, they might be able to give me some bonuses, but only if they have exclamation points above their heads. Okay, Casey has one at the moment. All right. You know, I actually think that Casey becomes playable if you buy a DLC, but I, just haven't done that. I haven't bought the DLC. I've barely gotten through the main game. See, there he is. Unlockable Casey, but I don't have him yet. I'm going to go with Leo this time. Okay, so I think I'm going to keep all of my artifacts the same way that I loaded them. Water dash ability. It's always a good one. So Leo hits a bit slower, but then he has a much broader range. Yes, slicing them up like a Ginzu. Leonardo cut them up. Okay, so let me take a break here for a moment. Let me check the download. Okay, I have to keep I have to tell Steam specifically to keep the download running while I'm playing. And there's also this this very remote amount that this actually might start sapping my bandwidth. So everything's a little bit touch and go at the moment. I'm going to just continue to play with the download going. I'm hoping that things will will shake out that way. If not, then I have at least an hour in order to take a break between the 2 4-hour blocks I'm going to be streaming. All right. Critical chance. Okay, well, everybody loves critical hits. You know that. All right. All right. Nothing like some good scrap. The only one giving lessons here is me. Oh. Okay, this is the first guy to take a bite out of me, and it's perfectly understandable because he's a great big foot soldier that's got a great big knife. you. That's almost as bad as, you know, fighting Leatherhead. Of course, it's not going to take as long. All right. I had to do this again, but, you know, just take half a second in order to make sure that I'm still downloading. You know, I'm not even playing online. I don't know why Steam always kind of puts these limitations on things. But it's better than trying to buy games imported. You know, there's a small part of me that kind of regrets my decision to go all Steam. But you know, the main reason being that that new Donkey Kong game, Donkey Kong Bonanza, is coming out, and people are treating it like they discovered fire. You know, but also that's kind of something I think that is a little bit of a dirty thing that Nintendo does, is that they hold off on making sequels to franchises for a very long time, and then when they bring them, then they finally decide to bring them back. Then people go immediately gaga for the prospect of playing it. You know, back in my day, everything, you know, I used to play that was a Nintendo game used to feel really good, but you know, that's kind of tapered off. Especially since some of my favorite, you know, developers in Nintendo have at this point either retired or passed away, including Miyamoto and Satoru Iwata. You know, these were people who actually, you know, had a business acumen that really made Nintendo top of the line company. You know, these days it's tapering off, but you know, what can I say? My generation is starting to descend, you know, in a very general way these days. In a way, you can't even really feel bad that things are changing, is that you just have to accept the fact that things are changing. Let's see. I actually might want to switch to the manhole cover because I am making a pretty studious attempt in order to stay with water damage. All right. Oh, look. I get to increase my water dash now. That's really useful. And then buy the pizza, of course. And then add dash attack damage for 75 points. You know. It's great in order to have enough scrap in order to buy everything in the shop before I have to go on to the boss battle. All right. Always. You know, I do love a good low-pitched growling voice actor. You know, even after, you know, getting into things like anime later in life during the day, is that, you know, I try to do my level best in order to do the noble, strong voiceover guy. You go, Nani? Are you kidding? You know, I don't do it well, but I certainly try to do it. Omae wa mou shinderu. All right. You know, something that's really amazing because, you know, as I was growing up, you know, I looked directly at the Ninja Turtles, and the Ninja Turtles used to inform literally everything I used to know about ninjutsu and martial arts in general. You know, now the whole world seems to have gotten pretty extremely cultured when it comes to Eastern types of philosophy and practice and defense and everything that you need to do in order to make these experiences as authentic as possible. You know, this is what I like to emphasize when I'm playing the role of Brainy. You know, how far have we come when it comes to just thought? You know, and that's, you know, thought, THOUTGHT, not THOT. That's something else entirely. You know, I might have misspelled one of those too while I was making the joke. Alright. Alright. Look at him pound the ground. You know. If those cracks in the cement were not symbolic, it really would suck. Okay, well, I didn't do the best I could against the first boss, but I did significantly better than I did when I was playing Mikey.
She's waiting for us.
Flow like water. Swim like turtle. Okay, you know, there's actually an X button to skip to hold. I should actually be using that instead of just trying to mash my way throughout the conversations. Just a choice of currency. I might do the temporary currency, just so that I make sure that I have enough in order to buy enough upgrades during this run. You know, is the cornerstone of any good roguelike is that they really do everything they can in order to make you choose to what your potential benefits are. What your potential benefits can be. You know. Do I want pizza health now, or do I want pizza health later? Or do I want pizza health slowly over time? It's all good. Let's see. You know, I actually might want to try turtle powers this time. Oh, I have lots of water choices. Plus 20 attack and special damage area. Okay, that's good. Like I said, we are leveling up nothing but water this time. Why would a turtle use anything else as their elemental magic? You tell me. All right. All right. Wow. I got a majorly critical against that robot. Scrap for now. Scrap for now, permanent upgrades later.
Looks like the bully brigade.
So what's really good is that unlike my last run, I've gotten really far and I haven't used one of my 2 extra lives yet. Ouch. Oh, he stopped me really good right there. Say, I certainly hope I can survive this with my lives intact. Okay. I am really, really, really hoping 50% until mental damage, that's what I'll pick.
Let's put this scrap to good use.
Okay, thank goodness. Okay, we're going to the shop next. I don't think I would have been able to survive if we didn't go to the shop next.
Welcome. Not here for long.
All right.
Hits the spot.
Well, you know, not going to get the most health back right now. Let me see. Boost to critical damage. 100% critical damage for 4 rooms. And while I'm here, I might as well just buy the bonus dragon coins too. You know, that actually might be a smart way to do this as a strategy.
Until we meet again.
You know, get nothing but scrap, but then buy bonus permanent upgrades whenever I go to the shop. That might be a way that I can tackle this. It's almost like free exchange duty-free in-game currency. All right. Tra-la-la. Take care of you. Of course, then there's these pairs of laser Mausers that just get together and do a Kamehameha wave on you. Okay, hardened shell, extra defense. Defense, clap, 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 defense. I can't actually clap. My fingers are on the controller. All right. Okay. Well, I hate to say it, I got the tiniest bit distracted, and it actually made me lose one of my 2 lives. Uh-oh. No, let me take that back. It made me lose both of my extra lives. Que la fregada. Let me see. What do I want to do here? Well, I want to increase water dash. Dashing and roll canceling is what keeps you alive in these really big battle games. You know, it really sucks to have a quarter health bar and no continues right as I'm about to fight a ninja, but that's the way that it shook out. All right.
I've heard of unorthodox ninja techniques, but come on. You can ever be.
You know, ironic that she's using fire against my water. That doesn't make this easy to do. And now I'm dead. So all of that was a moot point.
I won't let you down, Sensei.
Okay, I have to admit, Leo is doing me pretty good right now, so I think I'm going to keep him.
Thank you, Father.
80% maximum health. Okay, that's good to have. I can spend another 20 on 10% of my special damage. All right.
As depressing as this empty dojo is, I need to see it. To remember what we lost. What
Let me see. Plus for you know, I might as well buy it just because it's the next on the list and it's inexpensive. And I literally don't have little to no versions of these coins in order to spend. All right. So not much else that I can get here, I wager. Insulated pizza boost lasts for an additional 2 rooms. Okay, well, that kind of would help me because every time I get temporary power-ups, then that means I can use the pizza box in order to keep those going for 2 or 3 more rounds. That's actually a pretty good upgrade. All right. Far out. Reaganomics. All right, let's do this. Water dash, water attacks, water abilities. Okay, I always start with water dash. Okay. One who hopes to survive ninja battle must know how to roll dash like an MRFer. I don't have any health missing from me. Why would I want a pizza box right now? All right. Let me see. Dreamers, dragons. Like I said, scrap right out the gate. If I want permanent upgrades, I can buy them from the scrap store. That's how I'm gonna do that from now on. All right. See, this early in the game, they have very little to offer me besides currency. I'm saying I hate the sewer rat specifically because of the acid damage. The goggles, they do nothing. All right.
Well done.
73 out of 80 is really not enough in order to legitimize a health power-up. Goody goody. Now let's see, what else can we do here? Turtle light. So grappling hooks instead of shuriken. Or 30% critical. I think I'm going to do 30% critical. All right. Since I'm using the insulated pizza box, that means that that lasts a little bit longer as a temporary effect. Mm-hmm. 20% damage to bosses using ranged. Sadly, I'm not getting... I'm not sticking to one elemental damage. I think I can only do that if I stay with the shop. Just 20% neutral damage to my ranged.
New merchandise and fresh fare. Just a short stop.
Okay. As I can more than likely just afford it all, so I might as well just... Ooh, I actually got a rollover health from that. No, actually I didn't. I'm still like 14 points off of my total health. Let's see. 55 dragon coins.
Nice. That'll help.
Bonus damage.
Most of it.
Uh-huh.
Until we meet again.
All right.
Once more, Leatherhead.
Yeah, same pre-ass kicking one-liner. You go ahead and keep stomping that corner of the ground because I'm not standing on it. I'm going to try not to take too much damage while fighting Leatherhead. I'm going to try. I'm probably not going to succeed. One of my power-ups is making me do a slight forward dash whenever I do heavy attacks, which is a little bit damaging to the way that I hope to tackle this. All right.
Sorry, old fella.
Okay, well, I took very little damage and then I was able to recoup it from the end around pizza, so that's just as good as acing that battle. Let me see. Michelangelo gets me plus 10 on multi-hit. But Raph gives me plus 6 attack on critical hits. I'd rather have that. I think I only have one critical hit power-up, but I have nothing on a multi-hit power-up, so there you go. It was the right choice to make. See, these yellow guys with the skulls are a little bit more damaging than they look. You know, the true type of ninja, the one that is just a 100% assassin death agent, you know. Oh, my wa mo shindido. Pizza. Well, you know, pizza couldn't hurt right now, to be honest. Pizza couldn't hurt. You know, especially since the mid-level pizza power-ups are usually a little bit weak. I'm getting more crits than episodes of a web show. All right. Yeah. I need to stay alive. Pizza boxes over turtle powers right now.
Looks like the Footland don't want us crossing that bridge.
Okay, boost move speed, 40% move speed, last 6 rooms.
This won't last forever. Nice. Let's put this
I mean, so they're not even talking dash. They're literally saying that my character moves faster now.
My multicolored friends, welcome.
Hello again. Sorry about that.
All right.
Hits the spot.
Well, I screwed myself out of getting some turtle powers, but like I said, maybe the least of my worries at the moment.
Please do come again.
It's funny, now that I'm trying to go for water dash, I'm getting as few water power-ups as I possibly can, so... maybe it's just that I feel it more. Because, you know, in any roguelike, you're fighting for your life, basically. And so as soon as you know, find that you really need a certain kind of upgrade, then you suddenly find yourself not really getting it. At least not as much as you want to. Alright.
Surely there isn't an endless supply of this.
Okay, very good. So, increase my wave dash. That's important. Boxes. Boxes. I hate boxes. I'm going to slice up all the boxes on the level because I don't like the boxes. And every once in a while you actually do find something in it, so that's good. Alright.
Boss, we're coming. Someone's losing.
Okay, I probably wasted a pretty significant amount of health in that one fight, and it's not over yet. There's still an enormous wave of foot coming right after that. There we go. Sliced and diced. Now let's see what else can we do here. Plus 10% to dodge. Okay. Stronger hits, but in the exchange of more damage, which I think might be a mistake. Every once in a while, when you throw a random attack, you throw a shuriken with it. I'm gonna go with dodge. You know, I'm playing as Leonardo. Is that priority 1? You gotta get the fundamentals going.
Let's go investigate.
Okay, well, I'm in a better place than I was during my last run, but it's still not ideal. All right. All right, bring it. You know, now that I've actually managed to get it under control, you know, it actually feels pretty good, you know, to be able to dash forward to charge an attack, not playing as Leo. It's like a dash, but then it also does damage as soon as I approach the opponent. You know, you have to get yourself into the rhythm of dashing towards your opponent and then dashing away from your opponent, and then hitting 2 different buttons while you're doing it. Whoa, look at that.
Heard of unorthodox ninja techniques, but come on. So you could ever be Leonardo.
Youch. Okay, still not all that fun that she spits so much hot fire. All right. Crap. Okay, I lost my first health. I might have lost both of them at the same time. That was a big hit. All right. Life. Okay, I survived that. That was 1-to-1. I could have just as easily taken the last hit and died just then. Okay. So here's I got my pizza back. I have half of a health bar and no continues at this point. Well, at least we get to see the beginning of the 3rd level. All right. Okay, well, yeah, once again, yeah. April's not going to offer anything important in the cutscenes. Okay, I give it. I'm going to take the Utrom damage. They're not patently refuse to give me any other type of elemental damage. All right. You know, tech damage is really something that should be Donnie's thing, you know? Okay, I'm so dead. There's a very distinct possibility this run is going to end on this screen. Alright. You know, they're ninjas. They come out of nowhere. It's what they do. Upgrades. Move speed boost. No, well, what? I'm more than likely going to die within a couple of screens of this. You know, temporary upgrades, not very much of a priority. As a matter of fact, this is probably when I should start prioritizing the dragon coins, but I don't do it. I want to do all of this the hard way. Danger is my middle name. Well, either that or I'm just too lazy to try to use all the tools at my disposal. One of those two things. Okay. I can't believe I'm in stick and move mode with just a single Mauser. And there's still tons more enemies to come after that. You know, that's a Mauser that's holding a shield. You know. Shields. You know, I had shield breakers in the previous run. I don't have them now. Okay, now they've got the extra large Kamehameha Mausers coming after me. You know, the ones that if you stand in front of them long enough, you know, you're just going to get irradiated like something in a microwave. Okay, like I said, I anticipate losing out, so I better start grabbing the permanent upgrades now. Oh, wow, I made it to a shop.
Quick look and we go. Oops.
Well, pizza slice, of course. I didn't have a lot of scrap left either. Shurikens that do ooze damage. Or boost to bonus damage. I had a sneaking suspicion I could only buy one or other, so I'd rather go with the permanent.
Please do come again.
Okay, well, having half a health bar is better than having less than nothing. Yikes. Okay. Well, among all of my, all the enemies that are out at the moment, I have one punk frog that is shooting at me with a crossbow. You know, hey, you know, if the dude wants to be a merc, dude gets to be a merc. Merc's got a merc. Mercs gotta frequently lose out while they're merking. Utron Rod. I think that's actually a secondary weapon. I'd still rather have the shurikens. Nah, forget about it. Okay, I'm in this for the long haul. Is that, you know, this is no way gonna be a winning run. I'm just gonna go ahead and grab all of the permanents that I can. All right. Gotta be careful because the acid and the layer and the lasers are spurting out in 2 different directions. Oozy rat. Yikes. That was a big hex. Say more bile than you would find on talk radio. All right. Well, that's it. You know, I actually managed to do a lot of really significant things during this run. Unfortunately, I still lost to a giant sewer rat. I don't know how I'm supposed to feel about that. Okay, well, so probably what's going to be necessary for me right now, I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to back out of this. Take a moment to look at what this here... Oh, you know, this game is just kind of rather annoying, not letting me quit unless from the title screen. But anyways, that's neither here nor there now. I've got the download for Helldivers 2 going on for at like 56% right now. And so, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be taking a break so I can get a lunch. On this channel, what I usually do is I pull up some public domain cartoons in a stream that's separate from this, and then you guys are going to just be able to watch the cartoons run for the entirety of the time I'm eating. And then I'll come back as soon as I can, and then we'll continue to do the remaining between 4 and 6 hours that I plan to be on right now. So once again, you know, this stream is 100% to benefit my Tiltify campaign to support the Autistic Self-Advocacy Network. Right now is that we are sitting quite pretty at the amount of a total of $235. Thank you to Mikey, Ruby, and Jacob, Margarita, Gary, Stacy and Albert, Babani, Shelly Strauss, Cindy and Mark Blank, and my aunt, who has at this point donated $35. Everybody else has been between $25 and $50. I could not be happier. Is that not only are people giving, but also people are giving in a pretty significant amount. I certainly hope everybody that does give will actually be able to continue to afford it. I do believe that this cause is important, but also, I do realize that, we're living in times where money can actually be very tight. So, please do take care. But having said that, then absolutely, thank you for helping out with the campaign. So, like I said, I'm going to take a little break for now. When I come back on, I'm literally going to be playing Helldivers 2 with my cousin, and then following that, just anything, else that I might choose to do during this 8-hour campaign. So, it's April the 20th. It is my birthday. It is also Easter. And, we're just going to continue to do our absolute best in order to be able to raise cash for this very good cause. So, thank you, everybody, for staying tuned in so far. I'll be back after a break. And in the meantime, feel free to enjoy the cartoons. So for now, I'll just go ahead and do a sign off. Remember, BRNY means smart. Nothing is too hard if you use your head. Be the change that you always wanted to see in the world. So I'll be right back after lunch. So stick around, everybody.